Hello, Misfits, and welcome! Today we have another Reddit video for you where we react to a variety of D&D related Reddit stories and give our 2 cents and facepalm and all sorts of things. I did not pick out any of these stories. These are all selected by our very own Emily, so I'm going to pass it off to her. Emily, what is our theme today?
Our theme today is bad DMs, which we're very lucky to not have to deal with. So,
Thank goodness.
How kind of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't think we've ever had to deal with that. Well, I have, but not
Not
with y'all.
Yeah.
for sure.
So, our first story is Killer DM thinks deadly encounters are challenging and fun. I'm literally posting this while sat at the table watching our party get TPK'd. We're a party of 5, average level of 3. So far tonight, we've faced a CR8 encounter, a CR7, and we are now getting battered by a CR12 encountered. We've been allowed 1 short rest, and we had to argue for that. We're currently fighting a Medusa and 3 basilisks. The Medusa is also supped up with a permanent form of Tasha's Mind Whip to replace her normal weapons because the psychic damage gets around the barbarian's OP rage, quote unquote. I don't think I'll be back next week.
Ooh.
It's bad when someone's taking a break from D&D to post to Reddit about it.
Yeah.
During the session.
You've lost your players if they're on their phones and computers and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love that the DM is personally targeting barbarian rage,
Yeah, it's
to get around it.
it's a fine line because I will definitely customize a monster to better match the party. I will do that. I'll swap out spells on an enemy and do stuff like that. You do sort of strategize and target, but if I'm playing any sort of enemy that's got strategy and targeting, I have to consider what the enemy would know. I'm not going to target the healer unless my enemy has taken the time to learn who the healer is and what their weaknesses are,
Right. That makes sense.
So it's puts a lot on the DM to not metagame, and that can be tough. Not everybody can do that.
Well, and like you said, it's a fine line. This feels like it's steps fully across the line.
This feels overkill, not letting them rest at all. I mean, having a bunch of different encounters in one day, and they had to argue to short rest. It's funny because we came off of y'all went through multiple encounters in one day, and it was almost a TPK, but
correct.
It wasn't. I don't think y'all were necessarily we can't long rest. You decided to forge forward,
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's an interesting.
But that you let us make that decision on how long we wanted to rest and whether we wanted to do.
Yeah.
That wasn't a thing that we had to argue for, really.
Yeah. I wonder if this
I also
DM. You go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. I also think that in our case of taking a short rest, we knew we needed some sort of rest, and we also knew that if we didn't get any rest at all, we would be so screwed for whatever next fight came.
We did.
And we were still screwed. So not allowing players to take rests. I mean, obviously players can't overdo the rests, but
Yeah.
If you're throwing high level encounters at them back to back to back, you should allow an opportunity, I think.
Because generally there's sort of a guide of, different CR level encounters. You're only but you're recommended to do only a certain number of those back to back. You have 2 medium encounters equals a hard encounter, and 3 easy encounters equal. I'm making all this up, but that's kind of there's a general sort of way of stacking encounters. If they're all difficult, then that's not balanced, you know, then you're kind of screwing up. What I was going to say earlier is I wonder if this DM, I wonder if they've gotten frustrated with how hard it is to kill characters in D&D, because it is a difficult thing to do, especially after the players get past a certain level. And maybe that's resulted in this, like, I don't know, this approach.
I don't know. He did say that they're an average level of 3, though. Like, that's not high.
Yeah, that's not high.
Oh,
That's not to breaking game levels.
No, normally,
you know?
like, once you get to level 5 and beyond, it becomes pretty difficult to kill characters. Because I think once you're level 5, I think by then somebody gets Revivify, you know?
Right.
But
my favorite comment is when the fight's over, look the DM in the eye and say, "Well done, you win D&D. Your prize is that you don't get to DM us anymore."
Yeah.
Game over.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, the point's for everybody to have fun. So it's like, Come on. If your players are all mad, you've messed up.
Correct.
You done fucked up.
Yeah.
Okay.
For shame.
I've got a next one. This one's titled, DM makes his self-insert character the chosen one by fudging rolls. Yeah, it's a good face to make. Okay. This is a story about a DM who made his self-insert character the chosen one of a D&D campaign and used fake RNG to escape blame for all the terrible things he was writing into the story.
When you said this is a story, my head went to Fresh
all
Prince.
about how.
I was like, this is a story all about how whatever the words were after that.
That's fair.
Turned upside down.
That's fair.
Yeah, also
fair.
Immediately went there.
Sorry.
I love that for y'all.
You know.
All the names have, of course, been changed.
Okay.
I would like to preface this story by saying that despite what I'm about to say, I don't think that the DM who is the subject of the story is a bad person. I think he indulges in some very bad habits and perhaps has some serious issues regarding people and understanding personal boundaries. That being said, I do think this is a story worth telling. We started out as a group of 3 people who met on Roll20 in a campaign that was an absolute blast. We had a great DM and everyone was having a lot of fun. Unfortunately, real life got in the way, as it often does, and our DM had to cancel the campaign. We all understood and wished him the best, telling him to prioritize real life and not worry. At this point, though, we were all very invested in our characters and didn't want to see their story just end without a proper conclusion. So we decided to see if we could find another DM in order to give our campaign a little bit of a reboot. Same characters with a different story and setting. We went through a few DMs who didn't end up working out, and along the way, 2 new players joined our little friend group. Eventually, we ended up with a DM who I will be referring to as Fergus. He seemed pleasant, and we were all hoping that we'd finally found someone who'd work well with us as a group. At this point, our party consisted of myself, a goblin ranger, a half-elf paladin, an elf cleric, a dragonborn warlock, and a halfling barbarian. We sent Fergus all of our backstories, told him that we were looking for what we were looking for in a D&D game, and he got to work on the campaign. Session 1 finally comes around and we excitedly jump into the game. We spend most of the Session 1 in a tavern. We accept a quest to escort an NPC called Lance to the next town, and we end the session as we set out. No red flags during that first game. Everything seemed fine and normal. This would not last. In the following few sessions, we're ambushed by BBEG as we're traveling to the next town over. He interrupts our quest and lures us into a dungeon. As we enter the dungeon, we see Lance's character token for the first time. I jokingly remark that Lance's token portrait makes him look like a bit of a douche, and Fergus gets oddly defensive about this. I found this a bit strange, as supposedly Lance was just a random NPC that would only be around until we dumped him off at the next town, so why would Fergus get so defensive about us making fun of this guy? It would soon become painfully apparent why exactly this was. We pursue the BBEG into the depths of the dungeon, him speaking with us telepathically the whole time, mocking us, doing the whole bad guy monologue thing. All of a sudden, however, BBEG starts to exposition vomit and reveals in a shocking twist that Lance is his bastard son. All right, so Lance is more important than we initially realized. We don't dwell on it too much and decide to just move on and keep pursuing the BBEG. We eventually corner him and engage him in combat. The encounter goes decently well, but then suddenly something happens with Lance. For lack of a better term, he goes Super Saiyan and deals a crippling blow to the BBEG. BBEG does the whole, no, how can this be, before teleporting away. None of us were particularly thrilled to have had the final blow stolen by an NPC that was very clearly a scripted event, but we decided to just move on. What are we thinking so far?
Lance is a douche.
Yeah.
Also, of course his name is Lance. Like, it's like such a...
Yeah.
Come on, buddy.
I feel
Write
like
a
there are
novel.
Yeah. Well, and like I feel like there are ways to have a similar idea that gives the players more agency than that. Like,
right.
I would never script the final blow to an enemy, though. I would never take that from you.
no, that, yeah.
Sometimes
like
it
a lot.
happens. I think
It
that's
does
definitely
sometimes.
happened, but it's just
I've
because of the roll of the
definitely-
dice.
Yeah, I've definitely
Yeah.
had my own NPCs kill my own bad guys. That's absolutely
yeah.
happened. But
But
Like-
But it wasn't on
pre-planned.
purpose.
It wasn't
and you didn't take
scripted.
it from us.
Yeah.
I think I've had the deaths of NPCs be scripted, quote unquote, assuming a lot of other things happened.
Went right.
But, yeah, that's weird. That's super weird. Is there
Well,
more?
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
We still got a lot to go. So, I missed a session after the party exited the dungeon and returned the following one, expecting the party to have gotten rid of Lance, as none of us seemed to like him all that much. Instead, as I return, I'm informed that we haven't been able to make it to the town where we're supposed to drop Lance off. There's also been a new development in my absence, and I'm informed that our party has been joined by a new NPC, a female goblin who Fergus introduces as my love interest. To provide a bit of context, my character did have a love interest in his backstory, but it was something none of the characters knew about. My character, a goblin, had come from a war band which he'd abandoned due to being horribly mistreated, but he'd left behind a female goblin that he had feelings for. I was left in dumbfounded disbelief. Something that was supposed to have been a huge reveal about my character had been revealed to the group during a session wherein I wasn't even there. The picture he'd used to represent the character also wasn't the one I'd included with my backstory, and instead he used one that was a lot more sexualized. Trying my best to remain calm, I asked Fergus if he could please join me in a private call for a minute, which he agreed to. I did not mince words and straight up told him that I was very disappointed and upset with all of this. He appeared shocked that what he'd done had upset me, but to his credit, possibly because my tone made it clear that this was not up for negotiation, we decided to retcon the whole thing and make this girl a different character. It's worth mentioning that the point of my character having a love interest that he'd had to leave behind was to give him conflicted feelings about his past life. He may have abandoned his old warband, but there was still someone there who he cared about. Apparently, all of that had gone over Fergus's head. He seemed to believe that the only reason anyone would ever want their character to have a love interest is so that you'll have someone submissive to fawn over you and provide sexual favors. And the way he was depicting this goblin girl, who he'd been supposed to be my character's love interest, made me deeply uncomfortable. This girl had been made mute, a huge trope for submissive women, and was infantilized constantly, jumping on the bed, playing in mud, and acting like a child. The more I interacted with this character, the more creeped out I got, and I was about to find out that this was the norm for how Fergus wrote female characters. Let's pause there.
Oh no.
Has this dude met a girl?
Clearly
not.
Like, what the hell?
Oh my
Yeah.
God. I'd leave that game so fast.
Yeah, if
So
that had
fast.
happened and I'd been at that table, I would have said, okay, peace out, dude, bye.
Bye. Goodbye.
No, thank you. Plus, doing all of that when you're not there. Like, Amanda, I think you've specifically, like, rearranged stuff if someone's going to be out.
If I have stuff backstory related planned and then the person it's related to isn't able to come to the session, I move it to a different session. Like,
Yeah.
I don't do backstory stuff when you're not there. Like, what's the point? It's for you. It's not for me. It's for you.
Clearly, Fergus thought there was a lot of point.
Fucking Fergus. This dude.
So let's continue. This is a really long one, but I thought it was really, really,
Just
it's a lot of flags. Okay. Eventually, our characters did arrive while we were supposed to get rid of Lance, and nobody was sad to see this guy go. Lance was your typical edgy Gary Stu, devilishly good-looking, having great power, yet always talking about how he'd never asked for any of this. He was as shallow as a puddle, and Fergus continuously trying to show us that he was the coolest thing since sliced bread made him infinitely unlikable. It's also worth mentioning that Fergus never missed an opportunity to try and make something happen between Lance and the half-elf paladin, played by the only woman in our group of friends. It wasn't flirting as much. I know, that poor girl.
Bless her heart.
It wasn't flirting as much as it was him continuously trying to get some sort of reaction out of her. He'd have Lance show up without his shirt, describing in intricate detail the droplets of water trickling down his skin. He'd have Lance remark on her appearance, often making out-of-character comments about her high charisma. She's a paladin. Of course, her charisma is high. He'd have Lance make accidental sexual references and play it off as charming awkwardness. The player he was subjecting this to never responded to these advances and made it very clear that she was not interested. Yet, this stuff would continue throughout our entire time with Fergus. Again, I would have left already.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to romance and tabletop games, if a player isn't interested in it, you just need to fucking drop it. If you keep trying to push love interests at someone who repeatedly states that they're not interested, you're going to come off as cringy at best and creepy at worst. Anyways, it would get repetitive if I kept bringing up every single time this happened, so just assume that this is happening continuously in the background. So now, we're finally in a new place. We're introduced to the local magical artifact, which it turns out is a knockoff Excalibur shoved into a rock at the center of town. Fergus tells us that whomever pulls the sword from the stone is the chosen one, and that if any of us wish to try, he'll roll a D1000 table to see if we're able. So I know you already know
where this is going, and I hate it.
Yep.
So, pulling the sword out is supposedly a chance of 1 in 1,000. Now, before we go any further, we need to talk about fake RNG. Specifically, when a DM tells the party that they're rolling something on a random table, whilst in reality everything is scripted and the roll doesn't matter. Now, when it comes to fudging rolls, I realize that people have vastly different levels of tolerance for it. I realize that to some people, it doesn't matter if the DM fudges some rolls, so long as the end result is something cool. I personally don't have a lot of tolerance for it, but I understand why it wouldn't bother some people. However, if you're going to do that, be honest about it. Don't pretend as if the stars just happen to align perfectly whenever you have to roll on a random event table. I find it absolutely intolerable when something is painfully, transparently scripted and the DM goes, "Don't blame me, the dice made me do it," when it is clearly not what happened. Fergus did this a lot. He loved pulling out what he claimed to be tables for random events, and yet the events always seemed tailored to specific characters or situations. Now, I think you all know where this is going. I think we do. Everybody tries and fails, and then Lance tries, as we're just about to get rid of the bastard. I had a pit in my stomach when Fergus told us that Lance was going to try. It had become painfully obvious at this point that Lance was Fergus's self-insert character, and this would be a surefire way to keep him in the story. Lo and behold, the obvious thing happens. Fergus rolls a D1000 and then bursts into an exaggerated speech of, "Oh my god, I can't believe this! No way!" Of course, Lance rolled the magic number and pulled the sword out of the stone. The DM's self-insert character has become the chosen one. None of us are happy about this, and we quickly make an attempt to say, "That's great, Lance, bye now, good luck with that," but Fergus isn't about to let that happen. We make several attempts to ditch this guy, which ultimately culminates in the spirit of the sword materializing before our eyes and knocking us all out. When we wake up, we find that we've all been given strange magical tattoos. We are informed that we are now bound to help Lance in completing his quest to save the world, and if we don't, we will die.
Guess I'll die then.
Right?
Right? I would say, okay. Once again, it's another moment to peace out. I wouldn't continue with this campaign.
Write a book. You were right earlier.
Yeah,
just write a book.
Just write a book.
Yeah. Write your own King Arthur
Why
knockoff.
tell someone you're gonna roll for something when you're not? Like,
Correct.
I have fudged a roll before, but I have always been honest about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's always just, I don't do that prior to like the first few levels of the game, first couple of levels of the game. But like I would never say, "Let me roll," and then just make up something. Like I would not do that.
We thank you for that.
Yeah,
because it's pointless. It's stupid. If you don't want to roll for something, don't pretend that you need to roll for it. Like,
right.
And Lance needs to die. I'm sorry. Like,
gotta go.
Lance has to go.
Gotta go.
We're close to being done. I know this one's long, but there's just so much.
No.
So much.
It's fine.
Okay.
I'm surprised he's still got players.
I know. Again, I would have pieced out at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, to me personally, this is the absolutely worst type of railroading you could ever do. You literally shackle the players to your MacGuffin and inform them that doing anything other than exactly what they're being told to do will kill them. You've forbidden your players from abandoning a quest that they clearly aren't enjoying and don't want to pursue, and have shown that you don't care about their agency. I was thoroughly sick of this campaign at this point and wanted to quit. My friends weren't quite ready to leave, however, perhaps because we'd had such a difficult time finding a new DM. Remember, these are all like characters that they'd cared about and wanted to find a new campaign for.
Yeah,
So that
I
really
think that was also a mistake, though.
Yeah. And for their sake, I decided to stay against my better judgment. Beyond this point, the campaign turned into a lot of just disjointed nonsense with very little cohesion. As such, I'm mostly going to sum up the most bizarre things that happened before we finally decided to pull the plug on this monstrosity. 2 princesses showed up mere days after Lance had pulled Budget Excalibur out of the stone and declared that they both intended to be his wife. An unfathomable, I couldn't say that word. An unfathomable amount of time was spent dealing with this stupid plotline. It ultimately led to nothing. They both just followed Lance around, fawned over him, and fought over him. So yeah, Lance had a harem following him around now. They were both anime stereotypes, and all they ever talked about was how badly they wanted a piece of Lance. I know. During a later session,
has Fergus met a woman?
No.
Has he ever met a woman?
No.
I don't think he
woman
has.
at the table.
Well, clearly he doesn't know how they work. He doesn't know how to talk to them. Look,
Insane.
Lance, we can't use these people's D&D characters in this D&D game as a solution to the fact that you're not getting anything. Like, come on, buddy.
Well, like, in my brain, I'm like, okay, is he, like, thinking he's getting back at this girl for not being interested in his character by, like, introducing more female characters? Also, is he still flirting with the female character while he has this hair?
If I were that girl, I would have made my character, like, ace or a lesbian just to ward off Lance.
Absolutely.
Absolutely not.
Here's the thing, even if she'd tried to hit on one of these female characters, you know, if she had made her character lesbian, do you think that Fergus would have let that happen?
No, he would have. Well, he probably would have ogled over 2 girls flirting.
That's what would have happened.
And because it's Fergus controlling these girls, I'm not flirting with them. Like, no.
That's true.
No.
That's true. It's creepy. It's creepy. You're right.
Yeah, I would have left.
So much, like, ugh.
And earlier, remember, OP did say that we're supposed to just assume that all of the flirting that was happening with her, it was happening for the rest of everything too. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. During a later session, my character was offered a pair of dice to buy. Seeing the trap coming a mile away, I absolutely refused to buy them. Watching Fergus desperately trying to get me to buy the stupid dice was borderline comedic. It went from giving me a sales pitch to haggling to outright trying to give them to me for free. One of the other players took pity on Fergus and took the dice. I sincerely wish they hadn't, as we'd now given Fergus another weapon to fuck with the story in a way that would let him just...
Yeah,
I know. Just blame it on RNG. If it wasn't already painfully obvious that Fergus was fudging these rolls, it sure was now. The halfling barbarian in our party had been raised by orcs and often struggled with issues regarding his identity. Well, he ended up rolling the dice and was turned into an orc, and Fergus seemed to think that this resolved his character conflict. Of course, that didn't actually resolve anything, it just changed a player's race without their consent. Not long after this, the dice summoned a naked halfling girl, which was clearly supposed to be a love interest for our barbarian. A love interest was literally dropped into his lap out of thin air. At this point, my character grabbed the dice and tossed them off a cliff into a lake, as I was utterly sick of Fergus using fake RNG to mess with our characters. Naturally, the dice just appeared in my pocket again. We literally could not get rid of them. We'd once again been shackled to something nobody in the party liked or thought was fun. I believe this was when we'd all officially had enough. As a group, we finally decided to message Fergus and tell him that we weren't happy with the direction of the campaign and that we'd like to make some
All
changes.
together? All
I
at
know.
once? Shit.
Intervention. Full intervention.
I know. Fergus informed us that we appeared to be at an impasse then, as he was not willing to reboot the campaign, make any changes, or find any sort of compromise. Once we'd all been made aware of his response, we all quit the campaign, and that was the last I ever heard from him. I know this may be a bit of an anticlimactic ending, but I think maybe there's a lesson to be learned here. If a DM causes you this much frustration, then you need to speak up. By all means, give them a chance to make changes that would address your concerns, but if they refuse, just leave.
Yeah.
They're not with your time, and there's so many better people out there for you to play games with.
Oh,
Point.
Jesus.
my gosh. Fergus, to quote Hermione, Fergus has the emotional depth of a teaspoon.
You are.
Of a teaspoon.
Like, man, it was just one thing after another, too.
I don't
I
even
know.
know what else to say.
I know. It's really bad.
So
It's like
bad.
all of
Also-
the flags is one.
Look,
It's just a one giant red flag.
if you want to be a good DM, you need to learn how this sounds terrible, but you need to learn how to manipulate your players into buying the stuff you want them to buy, or like taking up the quests you want them to take up. Like,
That requires listening to your players, though.
yeah, it does, and like studying their behaviors and stuff.
I do think, though, at that point in the campaign, they probably didn't really want to buy anything he was
No.
giving them.
No. But also, like, that's also his mistake. Like, why even make it something for them to buy? Like, just have it show up in their pocket, you know? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, especially if
Yeah.
they can't get rid of it anyway, right?
Yeah. It's like if in your mind this is the only path for the campaign to continue, and you don't want them to make their own choices, you want them to make this choice, then you don't need to present it as if it is a choice. Like, what's the point? So
Okay,
bad.
I know. It's so bad.
It's so bad.
I have one more
So
really
bad.
short one.
It's
to
really
round this
short.
out.
Okay.
Okay.
We can do
really
it if it's really short.
Because I know
do a
we're
short
running
one.
out of time.
Yeah.
Okay. DM doesn't tell players about saving throws.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's bad.
Oh no.
So, we, the party, enter the basement of some mansion to clear out a monster for a local lord, and there's this humanoid monster wearing some magical chains that embody the sin of sloth. The DM says that while within 30 feet of this creature, you have your speed halved, can't take reactions, can only use a standard or bonus action, and no matter how many attacks you would normally get for a standard action, you only get one. Now, by itself, this wasn't so bad because it was a lone monster versus 4 party members. What was stupid was when we identified the chains after killing the monster, the item said this about the aura. Creatures can make a DC 18 wisdom save to ignore these effects, and when we asked him why we didn't get the save, he replied with, "I'm not going to tell you how to beat monsters."
That's not how it works.
That's
not
not
how it works.
telling them how to beat it. That's just
No.
if something
just
calls
letting-
for a save, you have to ask them to make the roll.
Yeah, you can't
Correct.
assume they fail it. Like, even with a high DC, you can't assume they fail it.
Yeah. My
That's
favorite
wild.
response. My favorite response is, "Well, I suppose you just don't tell the DM next time one of your spells requires a saving throw."
Yes, absolutely.
Turnabout? Fair play.
Absolutely.
Right? Honestly, I would leave. I would have a discussion if the DM said that. I would leave. Right?
Like-
I mean, if that's going to be their attitude, then that's just telling you how they're going to act throughout the rest of the campaign.
Yeah,
like,
correct.
True.
and it's just not going to be worth
They're
anybody's
turning
time.
it into DM versus players, and that's never
Yeah.
fun. You're
Yeah.
building a world and a game together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
I'm not here for that.
No.
I don't do the whole DM versus player thing. That's not my vibe.
Nope. Well, once again, all of these stories could have been sort of resolved with just communication
I don't know.
or removing yourself from a situation. I feel like this time communication isn't the only solution.
Well, I will say for the Fergus one, I do think the player that was getting the majority of the red flags up front, maybe if they had been more clear in their communication to the other players that like this wasn't good, then maybe they would have,
left earlier.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And, maybe if they communicated with Fergus more. Because, I mean, when they told him about how the love interest thing really upset them and wasn't okay, he did walk that back.
It's true.
That's true.
That is true.
Now, he made a bunch of other mistakes, but... I mean...
Open communication, both sides.
Yeah.
I do find it crazy. Like, you have all of these DMPCs that we love.
Yeah.
I
right?
have to remove them from this situation.
You do, because we're like, hey, let's go hang out
Let's just
with
have them answer all their questions and solve all their problems. No, guys, it's your game.
I think the difference is that you're not trying to be the main character. You just make really likable characters, right? That we love to hang out with. And
which is nice.
This was more of a I want to be a player kind of situation, it feels like.
Yeah.
You will hang out with me.
The key is that they're supposed to be NPCs. They're non-playable characters. They are not the main character. These are the people in video games that you buy stuff from or accept quests from, or maybe romance, but they are not the person that saves the day.
Right.
Ugh, man. It's tough. I mean, they don't necessarily write down how to be a good DM in a book. That's not always clear. It's a lot of, trial and error and stuff. But, these were examples of what not to do.
Bad DMs.
Bad DMs.
Yep. Bad DMs.
Bad DMs. All right. Well, these were enjoyable to listen to, and although a little disheartening, at least we are happy about our own game and our own situation. Audience, if you enjoyed these stories, if you have some horror stories of your own, or have heard some stories through the grapevine, or have suggestions for future themes, leave a comment down below. That is always very helpful. And of course, if you want to support this channel, feel free to like and subscribe. But with all that out of the way, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you again next time.